Hello and welcome to my bookshelf. Today I will be doing my review of The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Now this was my first ever Neil Gaiman read and I didn't know what to expect, and let me tell you, I was just blown away and very surprised by even what kind of story this was. I had no idea even what genre it was. But if you don't know, this is officially titled as a fantasy, but it really is more just magical realism, but either way, fantastical things happen. This middle-aged man, he comes home to his hometown. It's been a long, long time. And his childhood home is no longer there, but there's this old farm and this old farmhouse that used to be there, and he wanders over there, and he sits down on this bench, and it's overlooking this old pond, and it's there on that bench that he starts to remember this very fantastical thing that happened to him when he was 7 years old and this little girl that he met. It's just a really fantastic, engrossing story. It's really well written. It's very cinematic in nature. I really enjoyed his writing style because of that. Not only could you picture everything that was happening, but it's also cinematic in the sense that I can almost imagine a score playing and the emotions that he wants to evoke in you, and just this whole epic adventure. And I mean, this would translate very well into a movie, by the way. It's very short. It's less than 200 pages. It pretty much reads as a short story, which to me personally they make the best movies just because they are shorter and the movies are able to, translate it in a way that doesn't take out as much of the story as a normal novel would. Now, this is officially a novel, but I mean, it reads like a short story just because it's focused on this one thing and there's not all these different side plots. It's all pretty condensed, I think. But again, a lot happens in this story, and it's just a really enjoyable read. It's very cool. There's some genuinely terrifying moments in it, especially if you don't like creepy, crawly things like I do. Especially when they're anywhere near you. Yeah, it's just a really good story, and I think it has some really good messages, and it's just a really well told story. I gave it 4 to 5 stars. I'm still kind of on the fence if I want to give it another star and bump it up to 5. But I guess I'm going to keep it at 4 as of right now. It's definitely a book that I want to reread when I'm not in a rush. I first read this for the booktubeathon, and I had an hour or two to read it in, so I didn't give myself that much time to actually finish this book. So yeah, I finished it in the nick of time, but it was rather stressful. And I guess the only other thing I want to say about this book is I just want to touch on, kind of the big, message of the book, I would think, would just be this idea of, the difference between adults and children, especially when it comes to, storytelling and imagination and, fantastical things. And, as adults, it's not something that we typically invest in or believe in. Whereas children, that's their whole world. I mean, I remember as a kid, I had such a crazy imagination, and every little story that, I read or I saw on TV, I would act it out in my own life, and it actually felt like those things were happening, even though they really weren't. Your imagination and your mind, it works so differently when you're a kid. And you have all these crazy little adventures that no one else in the world, realizes it. They just kind of happen in your own little mind, and it's just an amazing experience that as adults we tend to lose because we don't have that fantastical, magical thinking like we do as kids. It's definitely a book that compares, adults versus children, and, where do we lose this, and, the importance of the imagination and, creative thinking. So it's definitely a really fun book, and I think it'd be a really good book to, read to a young kid who's ready to be slightly horrified. But it's a really good story, and it's definitely a book that I highly recommend if you haven't read it. It's very different. It's almost like this myth or something, it's got that kind of quality to it. This just it kind of, it reminds me of just like a fairy tale almost. It has that vibe to it. So if you're interested in kind of like a modern day fantastical fairy tale, this is kind of it. And similar to the original fairy tales, it's not exactly pleasant all the way through. Um, but it's definitely a story worth reading, I think. At the very least, just for the storytelling. I really enjoyed it. I'm very excited to read more Neil Gaiman in the future. So normally in reviews, I try to be well-rounded and kind of tell you like, the good, the bad, the ugly, that kind of stuff. I really don't have any bad things to say about this book. Overall, there's nothing major that I can think of that really detracts from the story unless you're a little squeamish. So yeah, it's just a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. I've definitely become a Neil Gaiman fan, and I hope to read more of his books in the future. Alright, so that's my review of The Ocean at the End of the Lane. Please let me know what your thoughts are on this book. I really liked it, but I'd be curious to see if there were some things that you didn't really like that much in this book that I completely forgot in the months since I read it. So please let me know what you think. And as always, thank you for watching this video, and until next time.